Welcome to the fully charged introduction to electric vans. In this series, we'll be looking at some of the new vans that have been coming on the market, but as well as that, speaking to companies that have been using electric vans commercially for years now to get some real world input. Bigger range is not always better. Vans have been called the invisible workforce, and that's because they do a huge amount of work behind the scenes that most of us don't really appreciate. I should point out for clarity that we are right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and even that's had an effect on how vans are being used and how much vans are being used. So without any more rambling from me, I'd like to introduce an expert in electric vans, because I am certainly not one. Paul Kirby from Vanarama. Paul, how are you?
I'm really well, thanks. I'm really well. And it's interesting, your introduction. I mean, the COVID experience is really not a good one for many, many people. But what it has emphasised through this period is that vans are really important. There are actually 4.1 million vans currently on the road, and they're roughly worth about 10% of GDP or 15% of traffic in and around the city. So they're a major player.
So how many of that 4.1 million is electric?
I think on the road today there's around 10,000. What we're experiencing with the vans that we've got on the market is that 80% at least of all the jobs that are out there in the big wide world could be completed by an electric van today. They have about an 80-mile range and beyond, so if you're doing less than 80 miles in a day, then you can charge overnight, which makes them a really efficient and effective option for anybody.
Okay, so I'm in the market for an electric van. What's my choice?
So your choice in the small sector currently is the Renault Kangoo and the Nissan ENV200. We're going to see the Zoe Cargo, which is a true car-derived van, coming back into the market in the next few months.
And that's been one of the biggest sellers, the car has been one of the biggest sellers in the car market, so actually a van equivalent should be pretty good.
It's got great range, it'll have the payload that it needs to have to do the job that it's designed to do. So that is a really good addition. And they've also done a conversion of the ENV200 to give a bit more space to that vehicle. So there's really 4 vehicles in the small van market that you've got there. Then in the medium van market, we've got this, which is the Maxus E Deliver 3, and then Vivaro is just about to come to market, and the Mercedes-Benz Vito and the Volkswagen Transporter is just coming to market as well. So there's sort of 4 in the mid sector, although, you know, again, availability is a bit of a challenge there. And then the large van, you've got the Renault Master, you've got a transition between the EV80, which is the big brother of this one, and then the E-Deliver 9, which is going to be the big sister of the new one. So it'll be an all-new electric vehicle into the market. You've also got Iveco producing one, and Mercedes-Benz Sprinter at the end of the year.
So, Paul, this is one of the medium vans in the electric van range at the moment?
It is. This is the Maxus E Deliver 3, formerly known as the EV30. So yeah, it's a medium-sized van with 2 sizes, a short wheelbase and a long wheelbase, one with about 5 meters cube and one with 6.3 meters cube. So it's 2 battery sizes, 35 and 52.5.
And what sort of ranges are you going to get from the vehicles?
So it starts at 100 miles for the basic battery on the short wheelbase, and then goes up to 151 miles for the big batteries.
And we were chatting before we started filming, and you made a brilliant point that I've not heard anyone else make yet. We're talking about range and the fact that everyone wants bigger ranges.
Yeah.
And you made the point that actually sometimes smaller range is what you want. You want a range that fits your needs.
Absolutely. Because if you're doing 20 miles a day, then you don't make a lot of saving on the fuel cost, which is where, of course, all the savings are. So roughly, and of course the cost of energy is higher and lower depending on where you go, it could be as much as 75% saving against a traditional fuel cost. But if you're doing 80 miles a day, then you're getting a 75% saving on a bigger chunk So the additional cost of the vehicle for the batteries and all of the other bits and pieces that we see on the vehicles is mitigated by that increased mileage. So there's an optimum mileage that we can achieve. So what we're seeing at the moment is vehicles like this one coming out with different size batteries to meet different size needs. Some of them around 100 miles range, some of them upwards over 200 miles range. So it's meeting the need at the price point that is most appropriate for the people buying it.
So the first thing I should say about the internals of the van is that it looks very much like a van. If you're after, like many EVs that are coming to market, a space age feel to the internals, a high-tech interface with a massive, touch screen, this is not it. However, if you're transitioning from a conventional combustion engine van, sort of thing you're used to, and you want a more familiar step into the electric world, this is a good option. When I first sat on it, it could have easily been an automatic diesel van. It's the same as a lot of the vans I've driven in the past. Even the handbrake is manual, old-fashioned ratchet handbrake, so nothing new there. It's pretty basic, as you'd expect from most light commercial vehicles. So apart from the sort of physical specs of the van, is there anything else that makes it a bit more attractive for a driver?
Well, from a driver comfort perspective, it has air conditioning, which almost all vans come to market without air conditioning, and you've got to pay lots of money to get it. It comes as standard on this vehicle. Also, just the basic armrest is really good, and also a rear view camera. And of course, it's worth saying again that the all electric vans are automatic, so it's a really good boon for the driver.
And presumably they've taken care of some of the things that are pretty essential if they're going to come to a European and British market, things like pallet sizes and that stuff in the back.
Absolutely. Well, what's interesting about this is a pre-production model is we went to put the 1200mm pallet in the back and it doesn't fit, but we are assured that the vehicle is coming out with 1220mm between the rear wheel arches, so you can slide in your pallet. It's got 2.1 meters load length and a decent loading height, so you can get in everything that you need to get in.
So pallets will fit in the vehicle, just not this particular vehicle.
This is a pre-production model.
So what sort of options can you get with the Maxus?
So the Maxus is coming to market with 0 options. So there is no options available to choose from on day one. So at the moment you've got a single passenger seat and you've got a single side loading door on the right side where it needs to be. However, coming next year we'll have a dual passenger seat and an extra sliding door, so if you want your sliding doors on both sides, then you'll be able to do that as well. And then there'll be other options that will be coming to market, which is why I think they've come with a really strong spec to start with.
There's a load of headroom in here, huge amount of headroom. Now I'm only 5'8", but even if you are 6'6", you still fit in here just fine. Now the raised seat is good. There's quite a bit of storage space under the seat. That said, it's not that accessible or well contained. I think I'd want to have a little Tupperware box or some kind of box to store my kit to then slide under the seat, otherwise it's going to be rolling around. There's also no glove box, no lockable glove box. There is a sort of little space, a shelf really for stuff, which is cool, but it's not as secure or as an out of sight as a glove box would be. It's got a couple of cup holders and a little shelf for your phone, but there's an awful lot of empty space down here beside the handbrake. And that's actually better used on some options. You can get an option that will be available, I think, later this year or early 2021. That so rather than having 2 front seats, you've got a bench front seat, basically giving you 3. As far as the back goes, you've got a bulkhead here between you and obviously the cargo area, which is pretty standard on vans of this size. However, what this one's got is a little window. You can actually see. So if you do, as I've had many times in the past, strange bangs and noises from the back and the feeling of kit moving around, it's nice that you can, or hopefully your passenger can take a quick glance back to make sure nothing's moved around too much and everything's in one piece. And how do you think that's going to compare to other electric vans of this type, like the Vivaro and that sort of thing, the Vito?
So what we know is the Vito is coming out at just a few pennies under £40,000, and then to get to some of the spec that this vehicle has, like air conditioning and things like that, you going up into 42, 43,000. We believe, and we have no information to this, but we believe the Vauxhall Vivaro will come out at around 40, and again the longer battery around 43. So there's going to be a significant price benefit, certainly in the initial phase, for this vehicle.
So it's cheaper because it's come from China. Does that have any impact on the quality of the build?
So when I first saw this vehicle, it was the Chinese version, so it was left-hand drive, and they do have a different understanding of what the look and feel should be. The great news is that the guys that work for Harris Automotive that bring this vehicle in have had a lot of dialogue with the Chinese, and as you get in the vehicle, and Andy, you'll see this for yourself as you drive the vehicle and use it, they've brought it up to a really good standard. And I wouldn't say it's the world's best, but it's definitely acceptable within the UK market, so you're not compromising on quality.
Now, I'm assuming that the more stuff I put in the back of a van, the less range I'm going to get.
Yeah, that's the reality, that whether you're putting it in an electric vehicle or a petrol engine, diesel engine, ICE vehicle, you're going to reduce the range by putting weight in the back. But you don't eliminate it, as people believe. Nissan say approximately 2% per 100 kilos is the reduction that you lose on the weight, and Renault have got a great web page linked to their Drive Electric area, and you can go in there and put the weight in, speed and stuff like that, and get a true real world range.
That's a lot less than I was expecting. I mean, you probably can get a bigger reduction just by ragging it around.
Absolutely, drive it like drive it you stole
it,
then and then you will drive it down, and also your average speed is much higher. You will get a lot less range than you would do in the predicted sense. But yeah, so if you've got weight, it's not a problem.
Now again, when I was doing my research on electric vans, I was comparing ranges, but I didn't realise, I assumed they were all based on an empty van, but that's not true, is it?
It's not true, no. So each van, it appears, has a different measure. Nissan, the EMV200 is based on 300 or 400 kilos, I forget which. I think the Renault Kangoo is about 50%. This vehicle here, 77% payload. Vauxhall say 28% in the back of their vehicles.
Yeah, it's worth checking out, because actually one vehicle may look like it's got a better range than this vehicle here.
Yeah.
But this might have been tested with 30% load, and that's got 75% load, and that's going to make a huge difference.
I think it's definitely worth asking the questions of each retailer when you go and ask the question. You know, what is the payload? What is that based on? What's the range? What is that based on? So it really is important to do your due diligence before you go ahead and buy a particular vehicle.
As far as charging is concerned, the charge point is at the front, like most EVs these days. On AC, it'll take a maximum charge of 7.4 kilowatts. It'll take 6 hours to charge from nothing to 100% on the short wheelbase small battery, the 35 kilowatt battery, and then it'll take 8 hours to charge to 100% on the big 52.5 battery. Now, if you're going to charge DC, it'll take you about 45 minutes to get to 80%, but it's worth mentioning that not all vans have the capacity to charge DC, and some manufacturers you can, but they'll charge you extra, an optional extra, to have the capability for DC charging, whereas with this van, DC charging comes as standard. The rear doors are double barn doors, which again I quite like. The flip over doors can be nice, you know, especially if it's raining, but actually I find that you end up having to park so far away from anything to get the back door open. It's a real pain. As far as the actual loads it can take, the short wheelbase can take 855 kilos of load, which is just shy of 1,900 pounds for our American viewers. The long wheelbase vehicle can take a metric ton, 1,000 kilograms, which is 2,200 pounds. Much easier conversion than that one. The short wheelbase version is 1.895 meters high, so but crucially under 2 meters, and even the long wheelbase, which is fractionally bigger, at 1.9 meters dead. So, but both are under 2 meters, which means they'll fit into the underground car parking in most places in UK and Europe. As far as the drive goes, it's actually a lot smoother than a lot of diesel vans I've driven. The acceleration is much punchier. There's a lot of torque up around the sort of 25, 30, 35 mile per hour range. That said, it should be pointed out, I've got nothing in the back this time. I'm completely empty, so I would expect it to be a bit faster and a bit punchier than it otherwise normally would be. With regenerative braking, or regen as it's known in the EV world, it's basically when you take your foot off the accelerator, the car slows down, but in slowing down there is energy basically reabsorbed by the battery to give you a bit more power, a bit more range. Now you can set the power of that, so at the moment I've got it on low. So if I just driving along, not touching the brake, just take my foot off the accelerator, obviously the car slows down and I'm getting a little bit of energy back into the battery. I can put that up to high energy recovery, and if I take my foot off the accelerator, it feels like I've put my foot in the brake, but I didn't. It can be a little off-putting for those new to EVs, but I like to drive on the highest setting to get as much energy back, and actually it saves you braking as much. And it's not just because I'm lazy, but obviously every time you brake, you're using the brake pads, it's wear and tear on the actual machine. So regenerative braking not only puts a bit more power back into your battery, it actually is better for the environment, and it increases the life of parts of the vehicle. So from a financial point of view, I'm a self-employed sole trader. I'm interested in buying a new van. I'm all for saving the planet, but obviously I've got kids to feed and a mortgage to pay. So the bottom line is going to cost me more or less to run an electric van.
So what we know is that the list price of these vehicles is more. The lease costs are more. However, there are advantages because the government is still putting in the plug-in van grant, which can be up to £8,000. So on your £40,000 van, it's already £32,000 once you take the grant off. So there is a tremendous opportunity to get into a vehicle, and it will not cost you as much as you think. And then you've got all the additional savings of just lower downtime, which is really important when electric vehicles don't need as much maintenance. They're spending less time off the road. And if a vehicle goes off the road, you have lost that opportunity to earn revenue. These vehicles, so far, we've seen, they stay on the road longer. They cost less to run, and they're better to drive.
And presumably, there's a saving in fuel.
Correct. So on an average cost of around 14p a kilowatt, which is roughly the cost average to most people, and on commercial rates it might be lower, but it's around 75% saving versus an ICE counterpart with the cost of diesel.
So that is the Maxus E Deliver 3. Nice little van. I think the ticket price, if anything, is probably the thing that's most attractive. It's competing with the likes of the E Vito and the Vivaro, and yet comes in significantly cheaper. We'll have to see how the others compare. From a business point of view, you need to look at more than just what would seem the best, because the fastest charging, the longest range and the biggest carrying capacity van may not be right for you, because that's going to come with the highest price tag. What you need to look at is which van's got the range that's right for the amount of range that you do in a day, that will carry the kit that you need it to carry and no more, and it will charge in the time that you've got to charge your vehicle. And on the next episode, I'll be looking at this, the Renault Kangoo, and taking it for a test drive, and also speaking to the people from the Brecon Beacons National Park Authority to find out how they've been using electric vehicles in their work. And of course, it's a big thank you to our Patreon supporters and YouTube members, without whose support episodes like this would not be possible. And if you'd like to like and subscribe to the series, that's a big help too, and much appreciated. And if you want to find out more about becoming a Patreon supporter or YouTube member, then take a look at the links below. That'd be much appreciated too. Apart from that, as always, if you have been, thanks for watching. This thing is like an F-16 power handle.